Greetings and welcome to the channel. This is Mikhailov from Team Retrog, where we like retro games and the devices that bring them to us. Today's handheld is the Anbernic RG405V. This handheld was released last year and may look like a Game Boy, but this thing can do so much more, and this Android-powered device, quite frankly, may be the best vertical Game Boy clone that I've ever reviewed on this channel. It's time to review this unit and see if it is worth your hard-earned $100. So let's jump in and let's get to work. The Anbernic RG405V can be purchased from GoGameGeek for about $169 at time of this recording. The unit that I am using was sent to me by GoGameGeek for the purposes of this review. As is always required, all opinions are my own, no money changed hands, and they are not seeing this review before it is published. It's now time to hop onto our mount and head on into Spec Town. This device is equipped with a Unisoc T618 CPU, which has been seen in many handhelds released last year. The onboard GPU is a Mali G52 at 850 MHz. There is 128 GB of onboard storage, which can be expanded via a micro SD card slot. The screen is a 4-inch IPS OCA laminated screen with a 480p resolution. There is a 5500 mAh battery that advertises up to 9 hours of battery life. The 405V has downward-facing dual speakers, and for connectivity, there is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 5.0. The device ships with Android 12. Now, the unboxing experience is your typical Anbernic fare. You'll find the unit, some plastic to store your cookies, a screen protector, the user manual, and I'm still very happy that Anbernic keeps improving this over time. There is also the standard charging cable that comes with these devices. So we're going to start our device tour at the top, where you will see the USB-C cable and some vents. This device actually has active cooling. The left side of the device has the SD card slot as well as a reset button. And while we're here, let's test the D-pad. I don't see any issues here. It actually feels fine. If we do a couple of quick tests using a fighting game, you can see my rear end getting handed to me by Ken. But I can pull off combo moves with a generally decent success rate. Likewise, with the Contra test, I don't see many accidental diagonals. In fact, if I just wiggle my finger back and forth on the bottom of the D-pad, our protagonist, whose name I believe is Johnny Contra, simply stays down on the ground, firmly pointing his gun forward. The face buttons also feel good. They are the right amount of mush for a Game Boy-like device, and they have the same kind of candy-like buttons that are in the RG35XXH. I really like these face buttons. The joysticks, not necessarily the focus of the device, but they are passable, they are Hall sensor, and they do click L3 and R3. Let's take a look at the buttons and triggers on the back of the device. Now, these are problematic. They're loose. Them being loose isn't the problem. The problem is that your index finger rests on these buttons while you're playing, and it is very easy to accidentally press these buttons with very little effort. This can be fixed by taking a small piece of electrical tape, folding it, and tucking it in between the button and the back of the device, like you see here. I actually learned this trick from Aish from Retro Handhelds and Aish Talks Tech. And it really works because it keeps the buttons from actuating accidentally, but it doesn't stop you from pressing the button naturally. I still have to take points off that this is something I had to manually fix, but thankfully, it's fairly simple if you don't mind seeing the tape wedged in there. Now, I also want to talk about the grips on the back of the 405V, but in order to do that, we need to take out an old friend, the Anbernic RG351V. This handheld has a very special place in my heart, to the point where I modded the face buttons and I put a sticker on it to make it look closer to the original Game Boy. However, the 351V has a flatter back, and that is a problem that a lot of these vertical handhelds have. But the 405V is chunky and has these grips that just feel comfortable in my hands. I tend to prefer horizontal handhelds like the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro or the Anbernic RG405V, but these grips on the back of the 405V finally feel right. Starting up this unit will give an Android experience with this anime-style live wallpaper, and you will more than likely be okay with this software once you change the front end to something like Daijisho. There is Play Store and Google Play services on this build. However, this device will perform so much better with GammaOS. And I did a video on how to install GammaOS on these devices sometime last year. Back then, I used the Anbernic RG405M, but that device is the horizontal version of the device you're seeing on screen, so you just need to make sure that you choose the right install file from the GitHub page and follow the instructions in my video and you'll be fine. The Gamma Squeeze really optimize this Android experience. Before doing this review, I put this device down for a few days due to my personal life getting busy, and I had forgotten to turn the 405V off. But when I went back to it, the battery had barely drained. The install process is a little involved, and you will need to unlock the bootloader, but it is definitely worth your time to flash GammaOS. Let's take a look at the gameplay performance of the Anbernic RG405V. As you can imagine, all of the 8 and 16-bit systems will work just fine, and this screen is gorgeous for 4x3 content. Being a Game Boy lookalike, you can imagine that Game Boy content also looks very impressive on this screen. There are minimal bezels to maintain the proper aspect ratio, but overall, everything looks and works great. Game Boy Advance also manages to especially impress due to the enhancements Gamma baked into GammaOS to really make this system look and play amazing. Moving on to the heavier stuff, Dreamcast, using the Redream emulator, manages to play at 100%, and I had some very good luck playing GameCube on this machine using the Vulkan backend. Unfortunately, GameCube is where the system's compatibility starts to top out. And while something like Animal Crossing ran just fine, a more intense game like Super Smash Bros. Melee suffered some slowdowns. Nintendo DS is playable on this device, and you can use the Drastic emulator to overlay the bottom screen over the top screen. You can also use the screen for touch controls if needed. While I wouldn't recommend 3DS on this device, a few games will be playable. New Super Mario Bros. 2 ran at 75% in the map screen, but when in an actual level, the game did run at full speed. This will not be the case with all 3DS games, and I would consider this system to be a bonus. Despite the 4x3 screen, there are a handful of Android games that do play decently on this device as well. Unfortunately, Pinball Arcade is not one of them because I found it very difficult to utilize the back triggers to control the machine. I'm bad at pinball to begin with, but this machine made me feel even worse. However, I had a pretty good experience playing games like Dead Cells and Horizon Chase. I even gave Balatro a try using the APK builder that has recently become available, but I found the text to be a bit too small to fully enjoy on this specific device. Now let's go ahead and wrap things up with my final thoughts. As always, we'll start with the positives. This is a very comfortable vertical handheld. This is the first Game Boy lookalike in a long time that I actually enjoyed playing for longer sessions, and it all has to do with the way the grips on the back are designed. It gives me a nice place to rest my fingers, and most other vertical handhelds need an extra grip to achieve the same level of comfort. You can play up to GameCube and Nintendo DS in this handheld with little issue, and there are some great games on all of those platforms. You also have the flexibility of Android and all of the front ends and emulators that come with it, as well as some Android gaming as well. All of this is good on its own, But if you then take the time to install GammaOS, a good device becomes an amazing device because you now get a ton of optimizations as well as an increase in battery life. Now let's mention some of the negatives. The stock Android experience is passable, but just not as good as GammaOS, forcing you to have to flash a new OS in order to get the best experience. I don't like that I had to manually fix the L and R buttons in order to keep them from accidentally pressing down, and those buttons are not the most comfortable to use anyway, which limits some of the games you can really enjoy on this device. In 2024, the T618 is kind of a dated chip, and there are handhelds at around the same price point as this one, like the Retroid Pocket 4, that have more powerful Dimensity chips in them now. And if you're looking for a handheld for 8 and 16-bit systems, the Anbernic RG405V family of systems exists now, and those are much cheaper. Therefore, you might not want to spend the money unless you want Android specifically or want a more premium experience. However, if you would like a bigger handheld that comes closest to the Game Boy experience without actually being a Game Boy, this is it. I honestly really like this handheld, and when I want to feel like I'm back in the 1990s playing my original Game Boy, this is what I reach for. If 12-year-old me had the Anbernic RG405V, he would feel like the luckiest kid in the world. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this a device you are considering? Do you have one? And what do you think is the best use case for a device like this? And please feel free to continue the conversation on the Retro Handhelds and the Steam Machine Discords, where you can find me hanging out in between videos. And if you want to support the show, like these wonderful people on the screen, you can do so by going to my Patreon page. Links for all these places are in the description. But that'll do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and please be sure to like and subscribe if this was helpful to you in any way. Every smash of that button helps the channel grow, and it allows me to get more content out to you. But until next time, bye for now, and don't stop believing.